Hey everyone, it's Ivana Emil Elizondo from Silver Moon Astrology and Transpersonal Counseling, also known as Silver Moon Counseling. And if you see Azul roaming around in the background over here, I have been trying to record this video, but every time I do, he ends up finding his squeaky toy and he squeaks, squeaks, squeaks. And so I hit the squeaky toy and then he found another one. So he's a little confused, maybe. So if you see him roaming around, that's what he's doing. But I'm here, or if you hear him shaking like that, yeah. Okay, I'm here because we have a full moon in Libra. So it is a lunar eclipse on March 25th at 2 a.m. So that's, yeah, March 25th at 2 a.m. So I want to share with you some of the energy, some of the themes that maybe this eclipse could entail, and maybe how to use the energy in your favor, because eclipses aren't necessarily, in my opinion, eclipses are eclipses for a reason, right? The light of the sun or the light of the moon, the light of the moon is hidden. So eclipses tend to be a little bit more challenging times. So I want to share with you what this could mean. So I'm going to, but wait, first I have to show you this. Okay. Yeah. I am a little bit on the nerdy side, and I didn't realize I could do this until like today. Isn't that cool? I love that. I absolutely love that. I'm in my pajamas and I'm recording my constellations, Yes, I'm in my pajamas. Isn't this cool? Okay, I'm sorry. I know I'm late to the game, but I totally had to share that with you because I thought that was so cool. All right, let's take this off. Actually, let me leave it on while I share the chart for this eclipse, lunar eclipse in Libra. So let me pull up my chart. Here we go. Let me show you. Here we go. Okay, so here we are. There's a couple of things I want us to focus on. Here is the moon, okay, at 5 degrees and 7 minutes. She is in Libra. Libra is an air sign. Okay, she was ruled by Venus, which is important. This eclipse is right. It's not a like massive eclipse. I mean, it's right on the cusp, right? Because here we have like 15 degrees and 35 minutes. So the moon is about 10 degrees away from the south node. This is the south node, but there is an influence of the south node. And we are going to talk about that. Here is the sun. Okay, the sun is in Aries, okay, and that is at 5 degrees, 7 minutes in Aries. But because this is an eclipse in Libra, I do have to take a look at Venus because Venus rules Libra, right? So Venus is in Pisces. She's in all her glory right now, but she is between Saturn, restriction and reality, and Neptune, which is illusion, delusion, and, all those things that are not manifest. So let's talk about what this means. Okay, but I am going to take this background off because I think my ADHD can't handle it. Okay, here we go. All right, so there's Azul. He's still looking for his toys. He's probably a little ticked off at me, but that's okay. Okay, so let's talk about eclipse energy, because the last time, if you want to think back to October 14th, and around that time period, 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, around that time period, we had the solar eclipse in Libra. Now, when we have a solar eclipse, 2 weeks later, we'll have a lunar eclipse. When we have a lunar eclipse, 2 weeks later, we'll have a solar eclipse. And so this is the eclipse cycle that we're constantly, having to manage, okay, and experience in our lives. But if you think back to October of 23, that was a solar eclipse. A solar eclipse is very much about an external experience in our life. Okay, there's an external manifestation, there's an external experience happening, whereas a lunar eclipse is more internal and an internalization, really going within. So external solar, lunar, internal for the most part. Okay, that's how we integrate the energy of the eclipses. Now, eclipse energy is not fun. Okay, because the light of the sun or the light of the moon is blocked, right? So the ancients thought these were kind of omens, all right? So I'm not saying that eclipses are omens necessarily, but positive things can happen. I was going to say good, but positive things can come out of eclipses. It's just that eclipse energy is a disruptive energy. And so in order to get to the good stuff, to the positive stuff, we have to go through some stuff. And that stuff isn't always very pleasant. Okay, so that is what, for eclipse energy, that is, from my perspective, that's what it is. Now, just so you know, I practice traditional Western tropical astrology. So I do tap into the ancient astrology for a lot of my definitive perspectives of astrology, but and eclipses are one of those, right? So, okay, so that's the lunar eclipse that will be happening is not a very tight eclipse by any means. It's not going to be anything like the eclipse that we're going to see, the solar eclipse that we're going to see here in 2 weeks in April. That's going to be a super karmic, destined type of eclipse with the sun in Aries. This eclipse is within 10, the south node is within 10 degrees of the moon. So it's still considered an eclipse, anywhere from 12 to 15 degrees. But for the most part, there is an influence of the south node, and the south node represents the past. Okay, so we are dealing with the moon, the past, things that are deep in our emotional psyche, our internal psychological nature, which is what the moon represents. And it's stuff about the past. It's what are we going to get rid of? What do you not need anymore? What have you mastered that you're still lugging along and you really don't need to do that anymore? So this eclipse is going to be very much about taking into account what we can release, what we can get rid of so that we can move forward. And this could be habits, perspectives, belief systems, people, projects. I mean, it could be anything that you feel is correlated to having to release. But because it's in Libra, Libra is an air sign, okay? It's an air sign, but it's ruled by Venus. So for me, and that's why I brought Venus into the mix a little bit earlier. Venus is in Pisces. And so she's in this middle space, kind of besieged between Saturn and Neptune. And so because Venus is the ruler of Libra, we have to take a look at the heart, okay? And so Libra is an air sign, but it's ruled by Venus, the heart. So for me, this eclipse is going to be very much about how can we consolidate the mind and the heart, right? How can we get them to, work in tandem, work together? And so Libra is about partnership. It's about love. It's about connection. It's about socialization. It's about bringing together. Okay, it's a very diplomatic, negotiative type of sign. It truly enjoys aesthetics and beauty and art. So anything related to these themes you might see during this eclipse. But for the most part, it is about community, but it's also about relationship. Now, this is my take on the eclipse. Okay, and so I'm going to share it with you, and then do with it what you will, and I'll give you some more insight about as to how you can use this in your life. If we think back to October, as I mentioned, right? October, the eclipse, solar eclipse in Libra, eclipse's energy lasts for about 6 months. You can start to see the manifestation, 2-3 weeks before the eclipse, but the energy of the eclipse, it lasts about 6 months, which means that eclipse experience is going to be about a 6-month transit. 6 month, I want to say transit, but a 6-month long time frame. There we go, better. Okay, and so when I think back to October of 23, that's when I had really decided I was on my spiritual journey to participate in a plant-based ceremony. All right. And I did that in November. So on October 14th, I was already connecting with, the therapist that was going to help me do this plant-based journey. I was already going within. I was already getting signs from the universe. And so my spiritual journey started around the time of the eclipse. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be super healing, right? Because it's an eclipse, so it has to be super healing. It was a solar eclipse, which means that the experience was going to be external. Well, let me just say that eclipse energy is disruptive, as I mentioned, okay? And it has been a super healing time. Not exactly what I envisioned. The ceremony was beautiful. I'm so glad I did the ceremony. I mean, it was one of the best experiences ever. But the aftermath of the stuff that I've had to heal from has been challenging the last 6 months. Like, Very, very challenging. I've been dealing with a health issue for about 2 years. And so the ceremony was really about, going deep within and trying to find a way to heal this health journey that I've been on. And oh my goodness, talk about going like deep into healing, right? So with this eclipse, that's happening. It's the culmination. I don't want to say it's a culmination of that healing experience, but it's the culmination of that energy. And it's interesting because this past weekend, I participated. I went with my brother. I was up in, we went to this thing in Dallas thing. We saw some speakers and, motivational speakers and so forth. And it was a very healing part of my healing journey. And it feels like it's the culmination where I'm really ready to take my life back. I'm really ready to step into that, I'm in a fork in the road. And so I have to take my life back. And so that's kind of the energy that eclipses bring. There's an experience that happens. There's almost the breakdown or the disruption of that energy. And then it's how are we going to rebuild from that? What's the outcome, right? Okay, that's my own personal experience. But because this eclipse is in Libra, this has been very much about relationship with the self. So for me, this eclipse is not only about relationships and community and connection, because that's very much Libra oriented, right? It's about connecting the mind and the heart. It's about finding alignment within us. And so for this eclipse, I say, because again, it's a lunar eclipse, so it's going to be internalized, it's going to be psycho intuitive, psycho spiritual. There's going to be, the whole depth psychology to it potentially, or it could be as easy as you just going, internal and taking a look at your intuitive sense and connecting with your essence. Now, I feel that if you really want to use the energy of the eclipse, okay, it would be great if we could get to a place where we are connecting with our higher selves, right? So, in from my perspective, and you don't have to agree with this, but from my perspective, each and every one of us are this essence of the divine being, right? We're all souls of the divine creator, okay? And each soul decides, hey, I want to have a lifetime on Earth or on another planet, right? But right now we're on Earth, so okay. So that part of the soul, it kind of drops a little bit of that energy down, and we have a higher self, right? A higher essence, the part of us that knows everything, that's connected to the divine, that can see what the avatar part of us, the lower part of us that's here having this human experience, okay, can't see. So we're divinely connected constantly, right? We have us here, the avatar, having this life. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it's disruptive. But the higher part of us, our higher self, our inner being, is in constant connection and alignment to our soul, right? Our divinity, our divine nature. We as human beings just sometimes lose the capacity to recognize that we are connected in that way. So for me, this lunar eclipse is about going within and really establishing, okay, and reconciling the connection with your higher self, the connection with your inner being. And that was part of my journey in October, was really getting into connection with that part of myself. Now, the way that I suggest that maybe you work with this energy is taking some time to meditate, taking some time to listen to that inner voice, that inner knowing, taking some time to do some practices, maybe spiritual practices that are going to connect the mind, the body, and the soul, right? So the mind and the heart. How many times do we, function from the heart and function from the heart, function from the head and forget the heart? How many times do we function from the heart and forget the head? How many of us have our heart closed? I'm working on it, Julie. Working on it. I'm opening. Okay. How many times do we try to rationalize? So for me, this eclipse is very much about going within. It's a lunar eclipse, and reconciling the connection or the relationship. The most important relationship that you have is the relationship to yourself. And this past weekend, as I hung out with my brother and we got to see some really great speakers, I was really motivated, right? My big takeaway from that was, what influence do I want to have? How can I help other people? How can I connect my own story, right? And share my story, my challenges and my successes and how can I share them with somebody else? Well, yes, that's amazing. But I think that we have to develop the connection within ourselves first, right? I mean, that's the most important connection. Now, this, Libra eclipse, if you don't believe anything about the higher self, if you don't believe anything about, plant-based medicine, not that you have to do it. Okay. If you don't believe anything about, the spirit energy and all that, that's fine too, because this eclipse is very much in tuned to external connection. It's the relationships and community and how you're connecting with other people, right? It's about taking your story out to others and see how planting seeds to see who might benefit from that story, right? It's also about listening to other people as well, okay? And really allowing that diplomatic negotiative, part of you to engage in really deep connections with people. So this eclipse for me is very much about connection. The eclipse in 2 weeks, the solar eclipse in 2 weeks is going to be in Aries, and Aries is about the self. It's about independence and sovereignty. So this is culminating. Like, how are you connecting with yourself? Because we're about to have this major solar eclipse, and it's a karmic eclipse. And, how are you going to step into that sense of identity? Well, before you can do that, I think you have to figure out your own identity first, right? Connecting within yourself. So yeah, so that's what I foresee for this eclipse. Again, it depends on where it falls in your chart. Okay, each placement in the chart is manifests a little bit differently. For me, this Libra eclipse is in my 6th house of health. Right, I've been dealing with health issues for about 2 years. It's in my house of work. Okay, so there has been some integration of some challenges in my area of work because of my health issues. So I'm hoping that this is going to be the culmination of that cycle. But where does it fall in your chart? That's most important. Okay, where does it fall in your chart? So you can get more information about this specific energy. If you want to, maybe sit with me, we can have a consultation, we can strategize, and we can go from there. But regardless of whether or not we know what house it's in, you do have an idea of what this theme of this eclipse is going to be. This energy is going to last for 6 months. Every eclipse is an ending and a beginning. Okay, so it is going to last for about 6 months. But this is more of a preparatory time as we head into this solar eclipse here in 2 weeks in Aries. Now, mind you, right before the solar eclipse, we are going to have Mercury turn retrograde in Aries. And so there's a lot of Aries energy going on. So those are the polarities. We have Libra, partnership, connection, community, and then social networking. And then on the other side, we have Aries, independence, sovereignty, freedom, okay, the self. So yeah, these are some very powerful eclipses that we are dealing with. So anyhow, that is it. If you want to learn more, you can find me at silvermooncounseling.org. That is silvermooncounseling.org. And that's it, everyone. Okay, let's be prepared. Let's find community within yourself, find community externally, be kind to each other, be nice to each other. But most importantly, what I'm learning is that we need to be kind and nice and honor ourselves first. All right, everyone, take care. Blessed be.